Researchers discovered the feral people in the national parks, not through satellite imagery, not in a lab. They found them by walking into the wilderness and not coming back the same.
I think the article, I was addressing the premises of literally feral people who are living in the national forest, national parks.
A 6-year-old boy vanishes in broad daylight. 1,400 people search 60 square miles and find nothing. A witness sees a wild-looking man carrying something red through the trees, and an 18-year-old hiking alone through California is stalked for nearly 100 miles by figures in white, who find his campsite in total darkness, circle his tent in silence, and shine a light directly onto him while he's sleeping. Over 1,600 people have disappeared in America's national parks without explanation. These are the cases that explain why.
Hey, there's something. What the fuck? Maroon?
Thing comes about that posits, what if the national parks are home to clans of feral cannibal people? And you know what? Maybe they're not too far off.
Dennis Martin. In June 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin was on a Father's Day camping trip with his family near Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The afternoon was warm. Dennis and 3 other boys came up with a plan to hide behind separate bushes and jump out to scare the adults. A harmless prank. The other 3 boys jumped out on cue. Dennis didn't. His father waited a moment, then another. Then he started calling the boy's name. The forest answered with silence. He searched every hiding spot near the campsite. He ran 2 miles down the trail, checking everywhere a 6-year-old could have gone in 5 minutes. Nothing. The search that followed was the largest in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains. Over 1,400 people joined the operation. Park rangers, volunteers, the National Guard, and U.S. Army Green Berets. They covered nearly 60 square miles. Helicopters flew grids. Dogs tracked scent trails that went cold within hours. Divers checked pools in nearby streams. Every creek bed, every ravine, every thicket was searched on hands and knees. They found nothing. Not a shoe, not a fiber from his shirt, not a bone. Heavy rainstorms hit the mountains in the days after the disappearance, and investigators believed the rain could have washed away evidence. But rain doesn't erase a child. Something had to have moved him. Fast. Then Harold Key came forward, and the story got worse. What Harold Key saw. Harold Key and his family were hiking in a different section of the Smokies on the same day Dennis vanished. Without warning, an enormous guttural scream tore through the forest. Key described it as sickening, a sound that made the air feel wrong. Seconds after the scream, he saw movement in the dense brush. A rough, disheveled figure was slipping through the trees, staying low, moving deliberately, clearly trying to avoid being seen. At first, Key thought it was a bear, but it wasn't. It was a man, unkempt, wild-looking, moving through the undergrowth in a way that suggested he knew the forest better than any trail. And he was carrying something over his shoulder, something red, the same color as the shirt Dennis Martin was wearing. Dennis's father believed it immediately. He was convinced his son had been taken, not lost. Investigators struggled with Key's account. The distance and timing made a direct connection difficult to confirm. But Key never changed his story, and nobody ever found Dennis Martin. The case remains unsolved. Over 50 years. No body, no suspect, no explanation. Dennis Martin's disappearance fits a pattern that researchers have tracked across America's national parks for decades. But it wasn't until 2008 that someone survived the kind of encounter that might explain what happened to Dennis. His name was Matt Higgins, and what followed him through 2 national forests is the most terrifying wilderness account ever recorded. Matt Higgins. In 2008, 18-year-old Matt Higgins set out to hike the California section of the Pacific Crest Trail, a 1,700-mile route stretching from the Mexican border to Oregon. He was inspired by the film Into the Wild and wanted to test himself against the wilderness before deciding what to do with his life. He was experienced. He had grown up hiking and camping across Oregon. He was not a beginner. The first weeks were routine, long days of hiking through deserts and over mountains. He set up camp each night, ate, slept, and repeated the cycle. The only real adversity was mild dehydration and nearly stepping on a rattlesnake. Then he entered Lassen National Forest, a dense, heavily wooded stretch roughly 150 miles from the Oregon border. The trail narrowed. The trees pressed tight against both sides like walls extending 100 feet into the air. It was dark, even in the middle of the day. The only sound was birdsong and insects. It was peaceful. And that's where everything changed. The trail banked hard to the right. Matt looked up. About 20 feet away, 2 middle-aged people were sitting on a large boulder. A man and a woman, both dressed head to toe in white, both filthy and disheveled. The man had a large, unkempt beard. They were staring at Matt with no expression on their faces. He smiled, he waved, he said, "Hi." They didn't respond. They didn't move. They just watched him with fixed, unblinking attention as he walked past. He could feel their eyes on his back long after he passed them. That evening, Matt set up camp about 300 feet off the main trail in a small clearing. He stored his food in a waterproof bag, sealed it, tied cord to it, and threw it over a high tree branch, well out of reach of bears. Then he climbed into his tent and fell asleep. The next morning, the food bag was gone, not torn open by an animal, cut down. The cord had been severed cleanly, and around the tree, pressed into the soft ground, were 2 sets of human boot prints. The prints didn't stop at the tree. They extended all the way to his tent, all around his tent, all over his campsite. 2 people had navigated 300 feet off the main trail in total darkness, found his campsite without making a sound, cut his food down, circled his tent while he slept, and left without waking him. The stick alarm. Matt started taking precautions. He rigged a perimeter of dry sticks around his campsite, positioned so anything stepping over them would snap loudly enough to wake him. 4 nights later, deep in the dark hours, those sticks broke. Not all at once, one after another, in a slow, deliberate circle around his tent. Then the whispering started. Not from one direction, from everywhere, from all around the forest. Frantic, indistinct murmuring closing in from every side. Whoever was outside his tent began circling it, footsteps moving in a steady loop while the whispers grew louder. Then everything stopped. No retreating footsteps, no rustling branches, no sound of anyone leaving, just silence, as if they were still standing there, waiting. Matt lay frozen with a hunting knife in his hand, unable to see anything in the pitch darkness, listening for any sign of movement. He heard nothing. He stayed awake until dawn. When the sun came up, fresh boot prints were everywhere. A clear track circled his tent. They had been standing right next to him, close enough to touch the fabric. Matt fled Lassen National Forest that day. He told himself he just needed to get out of their territory. Once he was clear, they would stop. He was wrong. Mount Shasta, Not only in American or European woods, but other countries have also seen strange wild men. In China's remote mountain regions, especially in places like the deep forests of Hubei province, there has long been a legend of the Yeren, often translated as the wild man. For centuries, villagers have spoken of encounters with tall, hairy, human-like figures moving silently through the trees, seen only briefly before disappearing into the misty wilderness. Some describe them as ape-like, others as strangely human, standing upright and watching from a distance before vanishing into the forest. What makes the Yeren story so powerful is its age. Reports of wild men in China stretch back over 2,000 years, appearing in ancient writings from as early as the Warring States period and continuing through later dynasties. In modern times, the legend became especially focused around the Shenangjia forests, where locals and researchers reported footprints, hair samples, and fleeting sightings that sparked serious scientific expeditions in the 20th century. Some eyewitness accounts describe creatures over 6 feet tall, covered in reddish or dark hair, moving with unusual speed and strength through steep, isolated terrain. Others claim they hear strange vocalizations or find broken branches and oversized tracks without ever seeing the source. Over time, reports accumulated into hundreds of alleged sightings, though none have been conclusively verified. Still, the mystery persists. Are these sightings misidentified animals like bears or gibbons, or something more unusual hiding in the vast, unexplored landscapes of China's mountains? Matt pushed north into Mount Shasta Forest, an area with a deeply disturbing reputation among hikers and search teams. People go missing in Mount Shasta under baffling circumstances. Companions report seeing their hiking partner clearly, turning their back for just a moment, and when they turn around, the person is gone. No trace, no sound. Despite massive searches, they are never found. The forest swallows people. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th day, Matt found himself on an open ridge trail with long sightlines in every direction. He turned around. 2 small white dots were visible miles behind him on the same trail, moving steadily, following. He was now at least 50 miles from the boulder where he first saw them. They had followed him through Lassen, out of Lassen, and into a completely different forest. He checked his map. The nearest town, Castella, was 25 miles away. He was alone. Matt ran. He pulled out his map, saw Castella was 25 miles away, and started running. He ran for hours without stopping. He ran after the sun set, and the trail disappeared into shadow. He ran until it was so dark he couldn't see the ground beneath his feet and had to stop. Then he left the trail, pushed hundreds of feet into the forest, set up his tent in a clearing, laid out his stick perimeter with no gaps, climbed inside wearing all of his gear and boots in case he needed to flee, and lay there gripping his knife, knowing he would not sleep. Hours later, a stick snapped. The whispering returned from every direction. Then his tent lit up like a Christmas tree. Someone was standing directly outside, shining a light onto the fabric. Matt ripped off his sleeping bag, burst out of the tent screaming, and swung his knife at the darkness. He heard a stick crunch behind him. He turned. A dark figure was running straight at him. He didn't think. He ran. Pitch-black forest. Trees everywhere. Branches smashing into his face. He tripped and fell and got up and kept running. After 5 minutes he stumbled and landed at the base of a fallen tree propped up on a rock. There was a gap underneath. He slid under it and pressed himself flat against the ground. From beneath the log, he watched a light bobbing through the trees. Moving closer, closer. They were searching for him. The light swept over the log and kept going. They walked right past him, Matt stayed under that log until the middle of the next afternoon. Then he abandoned all of his gear and ran to the trail. He ran all the way to Costella. He hitchhiked to the town of Mount Shasta. And he told police everything. Authorities documented his report. Other hikers in the area had reported stolen supplies. But nobody else reported being pursued. Nobody else described figures in white stalking them for nearly 100 miles across 2 national forests, finding unmarked campsites in total darkness, and hunting them through the trees at night. Matt Higgins is the only known person to survive that kind of encounter and live to describe it. Which means the question isn't whether it happened. The question is how many people it happened to who didn't make it out. The pattern: over 1,600 people have vanished in America's national parks without explanation. Many are accidents, but a stubborn number share a pattern. Individuals vanish quickly, sometimes within sight of others. Massive searches find nothing: no body, no clothing, no evidence, as if the person was removed rather than lost. The concept of feral humans sounds like fiction, but in 1797, a boy was discovered in the forests of southern France after years of total isolation. Known as Victor of Aveyron, he couldn't speak, didn't respond to human voices, and moved through the forest with a speed and silence that suggested he had never lived indoors. He was captured and returned to civilization 8 separate times. Each time, he escaped back into the wild. He was finally kept permanently on his 8th capture and studied for years by physicians. He died in 1828 at the age of 40. He never spoke a complete sentence in his life. Victor proved that humans can survive in the wild indefinitely. They just don't come back from it the same. The Great Smoky Mountains cover 800 square miles of roadless wilderness. Lassen National Forest stretches across 1,700 square miles. Mount Shasta's forests have never been fully surveyed. If a small group of people wanted to live in those forests and never be found, the land would make it possible. Dennis Martin vanished in 1969. A witness saw a wild man carrying something red. Matt Higgins was stalked across 100 miles of wilderness by figures who moved through the forest like predators. And 1,600 people have disappeared with no explanation. Something is out there. The only question is whether we want to know what it is. The feral people in the national parks may be legend, or they may be the reason 1,600 people walked into the wilderness and never walked out. What do you think is hiding in those forests? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.